Good morning. Welcome to Friday Morning Live with Dr. Jen. So, every year I host a plant based challenge because plant based eating is one of the most powerful things that you can do for your health. And it's also one of the most powerful things you could do for the planet and obviously for animals. But the thing is, this when I went plant based myself 16 years ago, I will say it was the best nutritional education I have ever received. It was, a game changer for me, and every year when I do it, it really does help people make a shift. So, I'm Dr. Jen. I practice joyful medicine. I come here live every Friday morning. I'm a pediatrician, pediatric intensive care physician, lifestyle medicine specialist, also certified in culinary coaching and plant-based nutrition. And I love making nutrition and lifestyle joyful, approachable, and inclusive for everybody because I believe that in order to create sustainable habits, they should be joyful, and joy is essential to life. So that is my premise of how I practice and how I help people reverse disease. I help people reverse chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes and high cholesterol and heart disease and people that want to improve their health overall and longevity. So let's get to it. So I will say I went plant based initially because I recognized or I learned the effects that our factory farming has on the environment. And I learned that being plant based could be one of the most powerful things that we could do to decrease our effects on the environment. So I actually did a challenge. It was in a January challenge, and it was 28 days. It was the Forks Over Knives challenge. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but I will say that at the end of one of the things that held me back, because I thought about it for years before I actually went plant-based, and one of the things that held me back was because I was like, "What do you eat? How do you survive? Where do you get your protein?" Right? Because I had learned in medical school that, plant-based diets were kind of fringe. You had to be really careful and worry that people weren't getting enough nutrients and all of these things. So I really didn't feel confident myself. So when the challenge came up, I was like, "Oh, great! I have structure. I know what to do. I know what to eat. I had recipes." And I did the challenge, and I was like, "Oh, this isn't hard at all." And I felt great at the end. And my brother actually did it with me, and my husband at the time did it with me, and we all felt great. My brother actually was able to lower his blood pressure and lose weight, and it was great. Um, but during that time, I watched the movie Forks Over Knives, which, if you haven't seen that movie, I highly recommend watching it. It really changed how I look at medicine because I learned that people are actually reversing disease using diet. And so people had these long-standing chronic diseases, everything from heart disease, advanced cardiovascular disease, to diabetes, to autoimmune disease, all of these things, and they were eating whole food plant-based diets and reversing disease. I was blown away. So I wanted to learn more and more, and that's how I went down this road of becoming a lifestyle medicine, getting certified in plant-based nutrition first, and then becoming certified in lifestyle medicine. And it's amazing, and my love for I love to eat, I love to cook, so I have explored different culinary methods and trying different recipes and really making it joyful and flavorful because I feel that that is one of the most important things, right? We have five senses for a reason. We should be engaging them at all times, which I talk about a lot because of the joyful medicine. But the thing is, sometimes you may think that the environmental impacts not something you really need to worry about. When you look at now more and more, we're seeing the effects, direct effects of environmental impact, like finding plastics, microplastics inside of our bodies, like the effects of, factory farming antibiotic use on our antibiotic resistance, like the effects of pollution on our water, decreasing water supplies and things like that. It all really, we're interconnected. And, we're really connected to nature and animals as well. So I think recognizing that connection, because we are human beings, we're animals ourselves, and we are intimately connected to what happens in the environment and nature. So having that recognition is really, I think, important as well. But let's talk about it, the health effects, because that's really what I help people with now is helping people reverse disease, as I mentioned. And you cannot deny that when you eat more plants, when you have a plant forward diet, which is what I teach my patients, to eat more plants, you will notice that I always talk about what you should include as opposed to what you should exclude, but I'll talk a little bit about that too. Um, But when you eat more plants, when you have a plant-forward diet, it lowers risk of all types of chronic diseases. And people that consume plant-based diets have less infections. We found in COVID that people with plant-based diets that were on plant-based diets had less severe disease. You find that the risk of things like diabetes, like heart disease, like dementia, like kidney disease, like autoimmune disease, all of these things can be lowered. And even if you have these diseases, the management can be better. And in some cases, many cases, these diseases can be reversed when you focus on consuming whole unprocessed plant foods as the mainstay of what you consume. So, lowering your risk of hypertension, of having a cardiovascular event, of type 2 diabetes, of different types of cancers. It is the evidence is so strong, and sometimes it seems confusing because there's so many different diets out there. People are talking about all kinds of different things. When it comes down to it, the simplest things are the most powerful, and the simplest thing is just increasing the amount of plant foods that you consume. Plant foods are powerful. Plant foods also provide fiber, which helps stabilize blood sugar. They help support your gut health. We are finding more and more that our microbiome controls so much of our risk of disease, but also how we manage disease and inflammation. It supports our immune system. So having a strong gut, having a strong microbiome, a diverse microbiome is really essential to health. And how you get that is by consuming more plant foods. When you look at aging, where we're seeing rising dementia in our population, people that consume more plant foods have a lower risk of dementia. So these are goes on and on because when you think about how our blood vessels function, so that's dementia, that's heart disease, that's hypertension, um, peripheral vascular disease. All of these things are predicated on our blood vessels being responsive, resilient, responsive. And when you eat more plant foods, that supports that by improving how they contract and relax, but also decreasing inflammation within the blood vessel wall. So this is really important for overall health. So now I'll talk about why eliminating, or at least trying it for a month, eliminating animal foods is beneficial. Now, I mentioned the effects on the planet, when we talk about factory farming, when we talk about antibiotic use, when we talk about waste affecting the water systems, we talk about waste affecting and the infections, like when we look at outbreaks of E. coli and things like that, those are related to runoff often from large factory farms. But just the fact that animals consume more and are exposed to more pollution, you're by eating lower on the food chain, you lower your risk of exposure to these things like microplastics, like other pollutants in the environment and pesticides and all of those things. By eating the plants, eating from the source, you lower your risk of that. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, saturated fat. When we look at all of our chronic diseases, when we look at risk of dementia, when we look at risk of type 2 diabetes, when we look at cardiovascular health and vascular health overall, when we have a diet that's high in saturated fat, that increases our risk. And saturated fat is found in animal foods. All animal foods have saturated fat in them. So when we can lower our consumption of saturated fat, we do a world of good. Again, I will say that I focus more on what you should include because I find that often gets lost in the mix, that eating more plants is so important, but also lowering the saturated fat consumption, which lowers your LDL cholesterol, improves our insulin sensitivity, lowers our cardiometabolic risk factors overall. So the overall message I'm sending is when you crowd out or crowd in the plant foods, you kind of push the other ones to the side, and that's really the key. And so this is what I like to focus on. I'll talk a little bit about this challenge that I always do every year. So I always focus on plant-based. I will do an ongoing series about what is plant-based versus whole food plant-based, which all the different breakdowns versus vegan. But ultimately, when I talk about health, and even the environment, the more plant foods, the less animal foods, that's better for the environment. But the more plant foods you eat, the better it is for your body. So during the challenge, that is really the goal, is eating more plant foods, becoming aware of how the food affects your body. So when people do the challenge, they're always amazed at how good they feel. Getting an idea of what balance of foods you should eat, because that's really an important thing as you go through, if you do try it, to make sure you're getting all the right proper nutrients. So the key is that it's not about perfection. It's about learning what you can, and seeing how your body feels, and understanding how food affects your body, but also understanding about what foods actually can, how to put together a meal that actually supports your overall healing. And that's whenever I talk about anything, I'm always about progress over perfection. It's never all or nothing, but the more plants you eat, the better. And so I hope that you'll consider joining me. So the January challenge, I call it a plant-based January challenge as opposed to Veganuary, which is a more formal program that's focused on veganism. But I do it every year because I've seen again how it affected my life, it affected my career, but also how it helps many of my patients and colleagues and friends when we do this challenge every year. So I'm hosting the challenge starting on Monday. I know January has already started, but I figure Monday's like a natural start date. So if you want to join us, if you're curious, even if you're just curious, you don't have to begin, you don't have to be completely plant-based, you don't have to eliminate everything. If you do choose to, that you'll get the full benefit, but I support everybody every step of the way. It includes weekly meetings. I'll do recipes and guidance and some other, pointers along the way. And it's all evidence-based. And I'll be sharing all of my journey along the way. And yeah, education community. It'll be hosted on school, so you'll have an opportunity to interact with other people that are doing it. And hopefully, after you do the challenge, you'll want to continue it for the long term. So thank you for joining me today. Friday mornings, always at 9 a.m. I come live. If there's any topics you want to talk about, feel free to comment and we'll address them in future lives. But I hope that you'll join me in the future. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share to anybody that you think might benefit. And if you want to join the challenge, the link will be below. So hope to see you in the community. Have a great Friday.